The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The North Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Welcome back to North Kesteven, everybody, for a Friday episode. Now, if you're a fan of seeing earthworks on this channel in the form of moated sites, boy, this is the episode for you. In this place, I've got no less than 5 of them to talk about. They're all clustered together within an area of 2 square miles. Let's walk around those 2 square miles. This is the parish of Scredington. Scredington, farm at the Scredding. The last in this North Kesteven run sees us take on the lovely little village of Scredington. This one can be split into 2 parts. Scredington occupies the southern part of civilization here, whilst in the north there's a separate hamlet called Northbeck. The two are linked via a road and a footpath, but once upon a time they would have been connected almost seamlessly. You see, Scredington was once a much larger place. There's loads of evidence for that in the fields around here. There are no less than 5 moated sites. The largest of them is called Thorny Close, which covered a huge area to the west of the 2 settlements. The footpath which links Scredington to Northbeck these days crosses those earthworks, meaning we'll get a good look at them up close and personal. The other 4 moats are much smaller. Hambleton Moat is to the southeast of Scredington, Thorny Close is to the north of Northbeck, and there are 2 other tiny ones with apparently no name. On this walk we'll also be seeing St Andrew's Church, an old school and an old chapel, but by far and away the best landmark here is a gorgeous old Packhorse Bridge that crosses the Northbeck stream. West of everything there's an old railway line, and we'll be able to check out what's left of Aswarby and Scredington railway station before we leave this one behind. So come with me into a parish defined by its numerous earthworks, many moats, and its ancient Packhorse Bridge, and let's see how Scredington looks in 2025. Here we are in Scredington Village, a simple enough settlement that's based around 3 main roads: Station Road, Main Street and Church Lane. These are laid out in sort of a U-shape, with Church Lane running off to the south and east. Scredington was first mentioned in the Domesday Book, and it belonged to 2 landowners, Gilbert de Gant and Robert of Stafford. We'll learn a bit more about them in a bit. A church was also mentioned back then. The name Scredington is a little hard to determine the meaning of. Scholars generally agree it's a difficult name for which no real suggestion can be made, but one theory seems to be that it means farm at the Scredding. A Scredding is a term we haven't ever met before. It simply means a cut-off, detached piece of land. Others suggest it could be related to ancient landowners, perhaps someone called Skirheard. Whatever the case, this was an important village centuries ago, that's for sure. There are earthworks all over the place here, suggesting this was a real hive of activity. 5 moated sites exist around it, so it was a manorial complex like none other in North Kesteven. It has been suggested that some of the footpaths in the village may be of at least medieval date and may link with the Packhorse Bridge at Northbeck. Our first landmark in the village is the old school on Church Lane. Single story and made of polychromatic brick under a steeply pitched roof, this was built in 1877. It has a date stone in its front face which has the initials SPS. That stands for Scredington Primary School. Although it was hard to pin down when it closed, it's now been converted into a house, and children now attend other schools in the area like the ones at Osenby and Helpringham. Secondary aged children go to Sleaford. Well, I've had the village to myself so far. I've not seen a soul, but trust me, there is a community here in Scredington, and I'm hopeful that they'll all read this once it's on the notice board. You can find this outside the community centre, which is kind of at the southern end of the village, and there's absolutely no way to put this card unless I can squeeze it under there, potentially. Give me a second. I can, you know. I'm good at surgery. There we go. Card is in the board. Job done. Let's have a look at that community centre then. So, Church Lane also has the Scredington Community Centre. This was built in 2002 with its construction funded by the efforts of the locals and the National Lottery Community Fund. The centre is run by a volunteer committee. It was previously known as Scredington Village Hall. The centre has a sports field, a children's play area, changing rooms, showers and disabled facilities. It's available for business events, parties, weddings and all that kind of stuff, like any good community building should be. It can be hired for £18 an hour, according to its website. If you wander across the playing field to its southern edge, you can see part of the perimeter of a moated site. This is the smallest of the 5 which are located around Scredington and Northbeck, and it appears not to have a name. Not a lot is known about its history either, so let's move on to our next thing. I wonder how many residents of Scredington know that if they sit on this bench here at the play area, they're sat in front of a piece of ancient history in the form of that moated site. That's one of the smaller ones here in Scredington. There are 4 more still to talk about in this video, so we'd better keep moving around the place. Although, to be honest, I don't really want to move at the moment because this playing field in the sunshine looks absolutely fantastic, doesn't it? Might have 5 minutes here just to take the weight off my feet a little bit, and then we'll head towards these houses you can see in shot now and take a right turn. We're heading towards the church next. Next, it's the church. Dedicated to St Andrew, this was originally built in the 15th century and was later restored in 1869. It's part of an informal group of 3 churches that include Burton Pedwardine and Swayton, and we already know the name of that group, the Living Stones. The congregation travels between the 3 churches and many services are informal. Although almost entirely rebuilt in 1869, many medieval parts survive here, including some quite detailed decorated work. There are 2 pieces of stone grave marker with a 12th or 13th century cross pattern design reused in the north aisle's west windowsill. The church is located on the 50-foot contour of a small rise. From this vantage point, it's possible to see the surroundings as far away as the High Dyke. A hollow way begins on this rise, indicating there may be a connection between the 2 features. Now we have a long walk up to Northbeck via a road. Walking this way, you pass the second of the 5 moated sites. It sits on this corner where the road turns sharply from Scredington to head due north. Of the 5, this one's the hardest to know the existence of. As you can see, it just appears to be fields, but the moat is, or indeed was, there. Also, like the first one, not much is known about it. I would imagine a lot of it has been obliterated by modern farming now, and so again there's really no need to hang around. Let's continue on to Northbeck. It's getting warm now, the hat's gone. I've just been walking up this lane. It's not the longest lane in the world, but when you're in the sort of sun and it's beating down on you with a hat on, you do need to get rid of it, I think. Okay, we've arrived at Northbeck, and you can see there it says ford. Well, that's actually not correct, or at least not anymore, because there's no ford here at the moment. Not to say there hasn't been in the past, but there's definitely no water crossing this road. I'll tell you what is here though, a Packhorse Bridge. As you enter Northbeck, you simply cannot miss this fine medieval Packhorse Bridge. It's notable because it stands close to a modern bridge built in 1987, which is only about a foot away. Both bridges cross the Northbeck, which this part of Scredington takes its name from. This bridge is difficult to date, and there have been suggestions of construction as early as 1250 and as late as the 17th or 18th centuries. Nobody really knows for sure. One school of thought associates it with the monks of Sempringham. Locally, it was once known as the Roman Bridge, even though it can't be proved they ever had a hand in it or used either it or perhaps an earlier one. Although styled a Packhorse Bridge, the 3-metre width suggests it was built for carts, and this further reinforces the 17th century idea. When the estate around here was purchased in 1612 by George Gilson, it may be that this bridge was part of his improvements to the area. The top is 1.5 metres wide with a cobbled surface and large facing stones. On the north end, a large modern stone curb protects the bridge. At the south end, there's just a grass verge. The masonry is generally sound with some recent remortaring, although there are a few chips in the pathway. It was restored in the 20th century. The Northbeck, the waterway which runs under the bridges, passes between Northbeck and Scredington. It's one of two ancient waterways that drain the lands around Aswarby. The other is the Southbeck, which joins this one a bit to the west. The Northbeck passes through its own gap in the Burton Cliff and on to join the 40-foot drain beyond Hale Fen. Undoubtedly, this is a natural river and not a drain. That's evidenced by the several meanders and turns that cut through the Burton Cliff. However, it was improved in 1969 by the Lincolnshire River Authority when large concrete revetments were added below the original bridge. Northbeck itself is little more than a cluster of houses. It does, however, possess the third of the 5 moated sites. After passing through the hamlet, you're out into what seems like open countryside, and you'll see a clump of trees in a field. They surround Thorny Close. Okay, we've reached the northernmost part of Northbeck, and now we have the next of the moated sites, the third one. And this one is the best one yet, because as you can see, it's still got some water in it. And you can definitely see the island in the middle of the moat there. Very, very well pronounced earthworks. And currently there's a family of sheep who are enjoying the sunshine on that island. Let's talk a bit about this and what would have stood here in the past, potentially. Thorny Close moated site is situated across the road from the current manor house, so it can be easily deduced that this one is manorial. Its origins and tenurial context are, though, a little difficult to elucidate, mainly because of the presence of the fourth moated site not far from here. No concrete evidence has ever come to light to identify the Thorny Close moat. The earthworks at the site include a rectangular platform or island surrounded by a 10 or 12 metre wide moat, which still holds water to this day. There is a pronounced external bank on the northern side and a low broad bank to the south. There may have once been a further enclosure on the western side of the moat too. Crossing Northbeck on a footbridge, our next job is to cross the biggest of the moated sites, Hall Close. A scheduled ancient monument, this includes way more than just a moat. This field is loaded with earthworks, suggesting this was a huge manorial complex. In total, the site covers an area 320 metres by 250. It's not small. Again, it's hard to determine who held this in ancient times. The Domesday Book records 2 parcels of land at Scredington held by Robert of Stafford and Gilbert de Gant. However, by the 13th century the land was subdivided thanks to grants made to the church. Further divisions took place in the following century when the land was held by a number of prominent families. By the 15th century the Pilots family were the principal landholders, and it's they who are thought to have occupied this site. Of the 2 land holdings recorded in 1086, one settlement centre was probably established in Scredington and the other was at Northbeck, so it's possible that the book was referring to Thorny Close, but that's not known for sure. Hall Close sits on relatively low-lying ground which rises slightly to the south towards the present-day centre of Scredington Village. The remains include a moated platform or island adjacent to the Beck with a series of earthwork remains of ditched enclosures. The island takes the form of a rectangular platform measuring 95 metres by 60. Water for the moat was supplied by Northbeck until it was canalised immediately to the north. The northern arm of the moat was filled in during that canalisation, but it survives as a buried feature. Ponds would have surrounded the island, providing fish and fowl for the manor house, which would have formed the focus of the entire complex. That's why it's called Hall Close. That's one of the biggest complexes of medieval earthworks I've ever seen doing this. It stretches for quite a long way. It's massive, is Hall Close, and it's really good to have a look at it up close like that. You know, it's not easy to see in places because of the hedge, but if you can find the right vantage points, those earthworks look fantastic. We still have one more moated site to talk about, but that's going to come to you in sort of pictorial and map form because you can't really get to it. I'll cover that when we get to the end of this walk. We're nearly at the end of the walk actually. We've just got to walk down this street here, and this will take us past one final landmark and then we're heading back to the car. Now we're back in Scredington and we have one final landmark to see here before we reach the end of the route. That would be the former Wesleyan Chapel on Main Street. This opened in 1875, replacing an earlier chapel from 1840 that stood on the same site. It closed for worship in 1982 and has since been converted into a dwelling, rather aptly named Old Chapel House. And that's really it, but we haven't seen the 5th of the 5 moated sites. The thing is though, we can't because it's a little difficult to reach. No matter though, I can tell you about it, and it has a link to Rutland. The last moated site is situated off the lane that leads in a southeasterly direction towards Spanby. It's not the largest by any stretch of the imagination, but it's definitely got the most interesting backstory. During an excavation in 1959, prior to the levelling of the site, the plans of several buildings were uncovered on its moated platform. The earliest period of occupation was determined to be the late 13th century, whilst the main period was between 1350 and 1450. The building that stood on the central island was an aisled hall built of stone. There was a later 3-roomed house, but that didn't last much longer than the middle of the 16th century. This land was part of an estate owned by George Gilson. He used the revenue from this estate to endow an almshouse for 6 people in Morcott, which is in Rutland. We haven't been there yet, but we will. Morcott lies close to the 3 Rutland villages of Upper, Lower and Middle Hambleton, and tradition says that the name Hambleton Moat comes from that connection to Morcott. Prior to their destruction, the earthworks at this site were described as being very impressive and attractive, with the moat still retaining water. To finish things off, we have an old railway station to see. This is Aswarby and Scredington, which served both villages between 1872 and 1930. It was part of the Great Northern Railway's Bourne and Sleaford Railway and was originally shown on maps as Aswarby Station. By 1905, this name had changed to Aswarby and Scredington. It was never a major station, and its short tenure proves it was only ever intended for passengers. These days, it's a private dwelling, and the line it stood upon has since been lifted. It used to cross what is now the A52 near Threakingham, passing close to Holland Road service station before entering Billingborough. Here at this station, there was a level crossing. Behind the station there used to be a brick and tile works, which goes some way to explaining the raft of brick-built properties in the local area. Good stuff. And that wraps up another run in North Kesteven. We have just 14 parishes left in the district now, but we still have some of its biggest to cover. I'm talking the likes of Cranwell, Ruskington, Lessingham, North Hykeham, and of course the town at the centre of it all, Sleaford. Join me down here again soon and we'll catch a few more and keep that list ever shrinking. Bye for now. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.